Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy.
How you doing?
Good. I'd like to say happy Friday, but it's perhaps not such a happy Friday, but we're always happy.
We are always happy. Happy to be here, happy to entertain.
It's an oasis of something.
Something or other. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, innovation. This week, we've got a special feature on dirt and and things we bought as well. So lots of fun. Let's start, as always, with the news. So as you kind of alluded to at the top of the show, Ben, it's a bit of a depressing scene in the Ukraine and across Europe, and it's impacting on insurance.
Yeah, questions are obviously being put to everybody everywhere, but we focus on insurance largely in this show. So I picked out this story, which I think is perhaps really alluding to the power that any industry or sector has to constrain Russia. And the aviation insurance one would be the one that comes to mind. And so the story really is about now Lloyd's, I think, and London is not offering any insurance to carriers, to airlines, Russian airlines. I guess other places might well write this business, but that would be, if the global consensus grows, I guess it will be harder and harder for them to get that insurance, and that is another way of shutting off the economy in the country, I suppose. So it's the question, I think, goes beyond this: is what other areas could insurance intervene, or be, in this case, is asked to intervene? I think the other thing, just talking to people this week, is this is a complicated issue for the industry, and they are having to work out very carefully where the sanctions apply and don't apply, and then above all of that, a sort of moral imperative of where they will or who they'll do business with and who they won't. So it's quite complex, really, but it's a big thing.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you as well. It's kind of, there's two elements to this. Kind of, firstly, the power that financial services industry in the UK can put on kind of on Russia to stop those actions, but also then going forward, there is this question about complexity when you operate in a global marketplace, which we do. And everything is interlinked, and I think it's going to be quite tricky to unpick exactly those relationships and those ties. It's very murky as well.
It is, and it's funny because Russia is probably one of the largest countries that's probably not quite as integrated as many other places, I suspect. But I don't know that; I'm just guessing. But I think it's that you're right about that. Global integration now. To some extent, we don't want to get into the politics, but it feels like an old-fashioned kind of war from the 1950s type playbook. It doesn't, but it's not a 1950s world; it's a modern world, and the digital environment is so important. So you can stop things effectively just by turning the passwords off, and that's it. You haven't got a policy anymore. You can't fly. That's it. So. That's interesting. I think the other thing is just from the employee perspective. I think that's also very difficult for global players who've got people both in Russia and Ukraine and around the world, and to manage this. It's probably a smaller unfairness, but it just feels like you are not just attacking another a democratic nation, but you're also attacking all sorts of work cultures and things like that exist in the sort of ecosystems of all of the businesses and organizations. So it feels very it's distressing, and it's incredibly kind of damaging to everything, really. It's a shocking situation.
Yeah. Okay, let's move things on to other matters. So last week we talked about we kind of trailed, didn't we, the little feature we're going to do around share prices. We're going to pick it on a share price and then just explore the company a little bit. And you said last week you were going to talk about Hiscox, which coincidentally released their results this week. Where do you want to start? Is it the share price history, or which slide do you want?
Let's start with the ad. If you've got the ad there, let's just go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And you say coincidental, Jeremy, but I think we planned this. We knew the results were coming out.
Yeah, I know.
This show is planned months,
Months.
if not minutes in advance.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this was an ad that I picked out from a few years back, and this may seem unfair, but it was I thought, a clever ad. I think it was really quite funny. To tell you the truth, we assume that you do. We always start by assuming that your claim is valid. Now, this might be something you can argue technically is not something that Hiscox has been at fault on, but we had the whole BI case, and therefore this would be a difficult ad for them to put out at the moment, I would suggest. So it's been a tough time reputationally for the business, and I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about really is Hiscox as a share, as a financial share, and its financial performance. And we're going to look at other businesses too, because the work that we do and we get involved with is ultimately about whether these are commercially successful organizations, or more to the point, whether they will be in future, which is what investors want to know. So this is a question where we're increasingly talking about reputation and brand and softer issues like that, and then the actual financial performance. So this is an interesting one, Hiscox. So if you can bring it up, any of one of the analyses. This is the five. This is analysis going back to just before COVID, and actually one of the things you can see, if you think, does share price correlate with events? Well, yes, it does. I think very clearly you can see that the Hiscox share price really was caned at the point at which it was decided to stand up on the BI claims. And to be fair, this just goes up to about a week ago. So this is just before the results came out, and this has picked up again a bit. But the last, certainly the last year has been pretty dire for the last 2 years for the Hiscox business has been pretty dire, and it's not been certainly not been a buy for any investors, and the financial performance has been pretty poor, and they made big losses, right? So that shows that this is it's not been a period in which I think that they would have expected or hoped for, and some will say it's self-inflicted. Why did you say that? Why did you not just sort of duck and dive? And we know all the rest of the story. So this is it. And actually, though, last week, 2 years on, Hiscox has turned in some decent results. And then if you've got that article, maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But that those results show quite a turnaround in the business and some decent profit in most areas. They were generally reasonably well received. And actually, as you look at this picture, it's as always a bit more complex than it appears at first sight. And we're not just talking about BI claims. So Hiscox had some underperformance within its London market operation. There's been some remediation there. There's been some cost cutting. There's been definitely a sort of a restraint or a constraint, I think, in terms of writing business in their or so they say, in their personal lines area, their sort of high net worth area, and they pulled that back. So the growth there is quite low. Reinsurance does well. So, and they've benefited definitely from rate rises. So there's a lot of things, swings and roundabouts, but ultimately they've done pretty well, and the results are good, and they've come through. If you look over a 5-year period, you'd still say this has not been a good return. And that probably would be one of the points we referred to last week that McKinsey would make, that overall the industry is not producing value for investors. And so I think Hiscox still would be in that situation. And so this all looks quite good. Now, I also have data which is about brand and reputation and things like that. And I'll say, just at a very high level, that generally speaking, the Hiscox brand is not where it was. In most areas, it's down. Many of the brokers, wherever they may be, London, UK market, whatever, they are quite but certainly very aware, if you like, of the reputational issue, and it's far off where it was. So my question, and it is only a question, is whether this reputational damage is going to last, and even if they do pull back a bit financially, because these are not stellar results, these are just kind of okay results, and the growth isn't huge in the business. So my question is really about growth in the future. Hiscox doesn't look like a very big business now in global insurance terms. It's a medium-sized business. It's a mix of this sort of specialty commercial, which says it's got leading edge in, and the more traditional London market type stuff, and some business in America. But the question for me is, with this drag, which I think it is a drag on the brand, can it really build a really confident brand that's going to grow organically over the next 5 years? Now, if someone asked me now, would I invest in it? I'd say no, I'd hold on it. And in fact, I think the article here says hold for different reasons, to do with the insurance sector overall, because it's uncertain. But I think I wouldn't. I think I would go for perhaps brands that were in the market now, which were a bit more clean of this baggage. And I'd include people like Chubb and people like that in that, if I was going to just name a few names. Liberty, even AXA XL and people like that. There are lots and lots of big brands without this baggage, and that's my take. Is the baggage often in these situations is a drag. So what have they done about it? Well, they are clearly aware of this, I think, because they've hired this new. I mean, they've got, obviously, Bronick has now gone, and they've got a new chief executive, and they've also hired a new chief executive, John Dye. Here he is. Nice smile, nice big confident smile.
Yeah.
This guy, John Dye, is ex-head of the UK, the Allianz business in the UK. Pretty big hitter in anyone's book, and he's come in to take on the challenge. And I think his remarks are quite telling, I think, in the sense that he says it's a great brand at the core, i.e. implying, I think, it needs some rebuilding and some work. And I don't think if you're going really, really well, you need to hire a John Dye. There's a reason for that. So I'd say, look, good luck. But I think the jury is still out on the business. I think one swallow doesn't make a summer, or one set of financial results doesn't make a summer. So I think there's still a long way to go for Hiscox. And I mean, obviously, I hope it does get back to where it was. I think it's had a lot of problems. I think that people of the caliber of John Dye have got to really come out and be clear about where the business is going, set the strategy, set the vision, and not sort of brush stuff under the carpet. I think Hiscox has got to be much, much more open in a way than it has been about where it's going, the issues that it's had, and that it's making a break, if you like, with that past.
So I think this is a good appointment. for a number of reasons. I think I've known John. I don't know very well, but he's spoken at the events quite a few times. Interestingly, he spoke when he was chief executive of Allianz at the Digital Claims or Strategic Claims Conference, as was 5 or 6 years ago. So he definitely had that kind of service mentality, outlook. You know, the core of what we do is to deliver a claim service. Seems to be the message. How you do that is really everything to the business, and I think he's got some key attributes there, and he probably will bring that clarity of vision that you talk about, Ben, and hopefully that kind of that leadership, you know, and be able to galvanize people behind that vision and bring things forward. I think he does have, if we look at kind of the things that might be in his favor, I think, and we're going to talk about technology a bit later, but I do think there's an opportunity for them to kind of leverage the strong data I'm sure that they have around customers, to perhaps bring back some products and services that may give them the edge in the market. I'm not sure about that. It's just a hunch from the people that I know who work there, and you know, I think, you know, like any leader, when they come in, they have a certain period of time. I think that first 100 days, you know, it will be important. So we can probably come back in a few months' time, 3 months' time.
I agree with all of that, and I think he is a good guy, and I think he's also done a great job at Allianz, and it's a business I know very well. I would. He's also an ex-claims guy, isn't he, as well? So
yes,
that's an important thing. The thing is still is and we'll probably come back to this, but the thing that is slightly odd, he is such a big hitter. I'd argue he's a bigger hitter than the chief exec of the whole business, really, who's the ex-CFO. And that does, to me, perpetuate the imbalance that always has been there as a brand in his Hiscox, because he's only doing the UK bit, which is the commercial lines and personal lines specialty type stuff. And that is very different, obviously, from the London market. So I think to some extent, this business has to come together. I've always felt it's a bit of a pantomime horse, you know, in the sense that it's got these bits pulling against one another. They're two very different businesses. And I think that's where there's going to be potentially some issues and tension. And I'll be interested to see how, in personality terms, that plays out. Because I bet that having done the job he's done, he doesn't necessarily want to play. He'll want to lead it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I shouldn't really stir it up, but I will stir it up. Yeah.
one to watch there. So that's great, Ben. Thank you. So let's move things on, and we're going to look at other companies, aren't we? Use this kind of share price metric to see.
Yeah, it is useful. I mean, it's retrospective, as we say, but I think for us it gives us a sense of does the market really get what these businesses are about fully? And of course, the market doesn't have all the information. It guesses in the same way that we do.
Yeah,
but we're just adding another layer, I think, Jeremy. A good layer.
Absolutely. Good. Right, it's time for this. Hey, Ben, what's the word on the data street? So Ben, what's the word on the data street this week?
Insurance technology, or technology in general. So we've been talking about fintech and the confidence, and no wonder they're confident when you look at this, the global funding of startups. No wonder they were all wearing fancy smart clothes and shiny shoes and things. That's where it's coming from. A tsunami of capital is flowing into private tech. This is CB Insights, who are the tech information.
They're very good, aren't they? Actually,
CB. They are. Yeah. They are good. Actually, they really do. The founder. This is a few slides from the founder's presentation, which was pretty good. I mean, you know, maybe they drink the Kool-Aid a bit, I think, but that's the stance they take. But so 156.2 billion dollars. I mean, basically, the thing is that 2020 to 21, that's a big rise by anybody's measure, and you know, there is a wall of capital, a wash of capital behind these tech companies now, as we know that, as just said, investors are not always right. So what's behind all this? Well, and what does it mean for insurance technology? I think there is still the question mark over insurance technology, because I can read all of this CB Insight stuff, and there's a lot about banking, there's a lot about personal lines type stuff and personal fintech type things, payments, all those sort of things. They are clearly very big. I only see one mention really of insurance is a big market as well. It is, but it doesn't seem to have had the as much of the attention, but we do know that it has some of the attention. So the contention from CB Insights on the basis of the data is that in actual fact, that these businesses are quite disruptive, and that the biggest proportion of the money is going to fintech, so financial technology in general. And that's an interesting point, because that presumably means quite a lot will eventually start to come into InsurTech as well, if they can work out what it is. And but what they're saying is that the investments are working kind of quite differently from the way that big companies invest. So big companies tend to talk about TAM, total addressable market, when they look at an opportunity. So in other words, how much of the market, how much is the market worth if we could have no competitors and we could have 100% market share? And they work down from that number in terms of the prioritization of their strategies. Then they work out what's the available market and so on. The CB Insights are saying that actually a lot of tech businesses have worked quite differently from that. They've looked for niches or slices of markets. And so there is some examples in this presentation of banks that just focus on targeting teenagers. There's a product that focuses on helping divorced couples, an app that manages their finances and how they pay the alimony or the maintenance agreements and all that. So there's all these sort of niche things, but that very quickly, because of this capital, if they get a bit of traction, the money comes in, and then they build out the number of products and services into all sorts of different areas. So in other words, the technology is applicable to lots of different areas if they get into one area. So they're sort of locking in. And then behind that is another important statistic, which I haven't shown here today, but is that the cost of startups has dramatically reduced since the turn of the century. I mean, a tech startup now, they reckon, is on average about $5,000, which is simply peanuts. It means you can do it in your bedroom. So that the flow of ideas and potential is huge, obviously, and the barriers to entry are very low. So that so there's, if you like, it's a bottom-up approach from the tech businesses, and then once they get swooped upon by these big capital companies, they really dig in, and they really say, right, we're going to expand this incredibly quickly. So the speed of expansion over all of these tech businesses is massively faster than any other industry sector we've seen ever in history. So all of these together are sort of fueling this this growth, which is great. Obviously, it's good, and it's all starting to happen. And I suppose we had a sense of this from TinTech. But if we just go to the next slide, I think the other interesting thing is, which is an argument that's debated, which is, here's another chart, and this is from a guy called Jay Ritter, and it's off a website called Chartly, which is a really good, interesting site with lots of different charts, funnily enough. And anyway, Jay Ritter is a guy who writes about IPOs, basically. He knows a lot about them, and he analyzes them to death. And he basically, this is a chart that Chartly had done of his analysis, which shows that actually over time, and particularly recently, most IPOs are not profitable. So in other words, they're not profitable businesses, and yet they've done an IPO. Now, to be fair, a lot of technology businesses, despite what you may hear, are not doing IPOs. They're just privately owned, which gives them a lot more leeway in terms of growth and flexibility. But anyway, the question here, I think, goes back to companies like Lemonade, Hippo, other companies where we're saying, are the fundamentals right? Are they going to ever make money? And I think this is an insurance question. I don't want to answer it for the rest of the world's businesses because I don't know about the rest of the world's businesses. But insurance terms, there does seem to be a reasonable argument to say that the techie type businesses are not necessarily yet showing a track record of success. And so this may be fine. In other words, you can make some short-term money. The banks make some money off the IPOs. The executives make money, and so there seems to be a nice merry-go-round. But is it really fundamentally changing the industry to the benefit of the customers? So I don't have answers on any of this. I don't think anybody has answers, except that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of potential, I suppose, but there's also, I think, a lot of potential for failure along the way. And I presume it's some kind of Pareto rule of 80-20, where 80% of them will all fall by the wayside and 20% will go into skyrocket unicorn mode, as it were.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? I think it is really interesting that quite a lot of the you've taken InsurTech, and by that I mean technology companies that are new technology companies, as opposed to your lemonades that are insurance companies supposedly enabled through smart technology. That they are more privately owned. They're going after those slices. I think, and then are they profitable? Are they not? I don't know. I'm not involved in that. I think what I can say about that kind of approach means that you get lots and lots of little solutions.
Yeah.
And when you then put them together, you could then have something that is both pretty powerful and scalable, but also agile in the sense that you can unplug them when they become redundant, or in 5 years' time, and you can't do that. And I think what's changed in the industry is that kind of mindset that technology vendors will call a microservices approach to your architecture. But actually, when you talk to practitioners, CIOs and CTOs, they're talking about what's their data platform that they've got sitting at the core of their system, and then how can they use these technologies to either draw out insights or find efficiencies and things like that. And I think that is the kind of positivity that we sensed at the conference a couple of weeks ago, that they suddenly have a bit of clarity about the direction of travel, whereas before the pandemic there was just so much, look at that investment, and some of that will be in InsurTech. It's just all the time just going, look at this next shiny thing, look at this shiny thing, what does it fit together, where am I going, what am I doing? And I think that's the kind of positivity and clarity that's been lacking, and I think is now starting to emerge. We're on the first step of actually utilizing some of this tech to, as you rightly say, Ben, make a difference to users and to customers at the end of it.
I mean, it's interesting. I think the CB Insights analysis is that these new techs are eventually going to push out the incumbents, and they're thinking mainly of banking, I think, in that respect, in financial services. When it comes to insurance business or the insurance sector, my paper I did at your conference was all about the growth in partnerships, and that does seem to be something that we're seeing in insurance. It's about tech partnerships with insurance, as opposed to trying to knock the insurers out, which is a bit the lemonade model, although they've chosen a niche. But I think the interesting thing is that you are to the point you just made, you are talking about two business models, and I can call one fast and one slow. And the speed of the tech model is so far ahead, if you like, of an insurance model. So if I go and talk to people typically day-to-day in insurance about what they want from me, they'll say, look, what I want in data terms is just you to focus on the businesses that we do and not on the ones that we don't do. So the classes of business that we write. Whereas I think the tech business model is to say, it doesn't matter, you can write this because it's low cost, and we can actually make it happen because of the technology. In other words, the technology is enabling you to go anywhere you like. And that's a very different mindset from the one that says, could technology help me to write a bit more D&O in the space I've been, So I'm just thinking that there's going to be quite a tension in a lot of these partnerships between that fast model, particularly when you get smaller players who are getting a lot of money, a lot of investment, and even exits from IPOs which are successful and things. So that in a way, rather like in the general tech market, the tech businesses at the moment look like the a step down in the hierarchy, if you like, from the big carriers, the big insurance carriers. Do we get a situation in a few years' time where the DXCs, the Verisks, they are the dominant players in this market? In other words, they say we are big enough now, we're strong enough to take over the insurance industry completely and run it, basically.
Yeah,
I don't know, but it's
interesting.
Is it is it in the end? Is it a collaboration, or will they just basically munch the insurers up? And could they just switch? I mean, they could just switch. I mean, they might be working with a Chubb this week, but if suddenly they say, look, I think that business over there, a coalition or someone like that, they go, look, we'll throw our weight behind that one because they don't have legacy, they don't have cultural barriers, they have a strategy that's better. Chubb's, or a business like Chubb, becomes very threatened by that suddenly, and it shifts the industry. But I don't know. I'm speculating, obviously.
Yeah, obviously we don't know what's going to happen. If we did, we wouldn't be sitting here.
We wouldn't be sitting here, exactly.
Well, we'd still be doing the show, but it would just be from warmer climes.
All we can do is say, I told you so when we get it right, and then not show it ever again.
Yeah,
if we get it wrong. Bury it.
Absolutely bury it. Yeah.
In the archives, and say we never talked about that.
Never said that. No.
Not what we said.
Good stuff, Ben. Thank you. Thanks for that. So, which kind of just, well, we've already touched on it, but a little bit about the technology and change stuff. So I was running a breakfast briefing for London Market CIOs, CTOs, looking at the application of automation in underwriting. So pre-bind submissions was kind of the specific area, and I was fascinated to hear how they were actually using automation, because there's a lot of talk about automation, and I always think that it can only really be applied properly if you have kind of really high volumes of transactions that are repeatable, and you can give it to a computer to do. But actually, I found during the breakfast briefing that there weren't a massive number, not like millions and millions, but there were enough to make it a business case. But it was, what was interesting to me was that the business case was not about reducing costs. It was about freeing up capacity of humans in order to be able to do more value added stuff. So in the old process, the kind of work, the manual work that was being keyed into a computer and then being sent back from a service center to an underwriter, who could then start the work on the quotes. That whole process was taken care of by a computer, and then any exceptions were kicked out. Human would look at it and blah blah blah. But they were saying that we didn't actually get rid of anybody. We didn't sack anybody. That wasn't the idea. We actually moved them on in the business and up, into, it turned out in this case, a more digital space. So these people that were just manual data inputters, let's say, became actually experts in seeing other areas where this technology could be applied, and I thought that was really interesting. But I think, and that was not a simple, because I think there was a lot of pushback from the business to say, well, where's the dollar return in the next 6 months? But so there was a lot of work to actually shift that mindset to go, no, we will give you extra capacity. It's up to you what you do with it. But yeah, I think that was just really interesting for me.
And I think that's about what, I mean, in many ways, in terms of work I've done with people in the market, senior sort of chief execs talking about where underwriting was going in the future, and this was about 3 years ago, was that's where they felt it would go, was that you would enable, you would free underwriters up largely from the drudgery stuff, which is taking up a lot of time, is very inefficient and creates a lack of productivity. to much more productive roles. I think they also said that at the time that they could then hire younger, more technically and technologically as well adept individuals who would be cheap, who would save some cost, but they would also have some more. They would also develop more senior business developer type people who would, and innovation solutions type people who would also be there. So yeah, that's the kind of track it should go on if the technology starts to kick in, and it's a big change really for underwriting in London particularly, which it means that it must become a much more proactive sales, business development driven business than it has been hitherto, which is almost like an order taking passive model mostly.
Yeah, definitely. So that was a little insight from me, just that I thought was quite interesting, and well, hopefully it was quite useful.
Yeah.
Right. Anything else? Oh yeah, we've got. What did you buy this week? What annoyed? What thing did you buy that annoyed your wife? Now we have actually got a tenuous link. I mean, a very strong, thick, woolen, knitted link between innovation and what we're going to talk about now. So let's talk about what you bought this week. Ben, you bought Hoover. No,
I'm glad you put that up first because it's no longer called a Hoover. This is my new cordless cleaning device, as I like to call them. It's Tinco is the maker. So why is this one? I'm going to be shamed in a minute by your new toy, but anyway, I know that's coming. But anyway, so I'll try and make the most of this. So this Hoover, right? I researched this thing like I should, and I do, and it's like between this and a Dyson. This, by the way, was not a difficult one to get past my wife because she'd been going on at me to get a new Hoover for a long time, so we moved on. And anyway, the thing about this Hoover, is it's cordless, it's got batteries, so that's not very interesting. There's lots of that around, but this has got AI built in, and I bought it over the Dyson partly because of that. So the AI that's built in is it detects dirt and it adjusts the power of the suction, the vacuuming, according to how much dirt it detects, and it shows you on the screen. And even on your phone, if you can walk around, it's got an app attached to it. So you can laugh, Jeremy, but technology,
I love this.
Vacuuming technology has moved on, and I have to say it's absolutely great.
So the reason I say there's a tenuous link to be what we were talking about before is because before we came on air, we were talking about your purchase of this, and you said, that between this and the Dyson there wasn't much in it, but actually it was this technology that gave it the cutting edge. And then we were talking about innovative ideas and how they're thinking about it. And I think what you were saying is that kind of Dyson were looking at it from a particular point of view in terms of what type of floor the Hoover was on, whereas this was going, oh, maybe that isn't it. And it was all to do with power, using power and saving the battery. And so actually I find it fascinating.
Yeah, so it is. I mean, you're right. It's obviously people are probably turning off now at this point in the show, but I don't care. I'm going to plow on with this because it is very clever the way this piece of the software is working with the hardware, as it were, and the hardware is good quality. But Dyson's gone for a similar-ish sort of approach, but it's more about the kind of absolute power, and then a fairly simplistic bit of software that just detects between, say, a hard floor and a carpet. But you say, well, it doesn't matter, but that does matter to a lot because actually you want the thing to adjust just to whatever you're hoovering, not the carpet or the floor. So this is a major shift in the world of vacuuming, and it's an innovation, of course. But it's this is obviously going to be applicable in all areas. That these little clever bits of thinking are going to come in from the software side and say, how can you improve something that's as dull as dishwater or hoovers?
Yeah, but
Anyway.
it got your vote, didn't it? So that's
I'm loving it. I mean, I can't recommend this highly enough, you know. And it's a shame we can't get Tinco to sponsor this show. I might ask him.
Might go and get one later.
Yeah.
Right.
What have you bought then?
So let me flick forward somewhere. Oh no, that's no. Oh no, it's not there.
No.
I've uploaded the wrong one. Oh dear. God. What a fool. Yeah, so I bought a car, and actually here it is. I can share my screen. So yeah, I surprised my wife with something that's completely magical.
Didn't know where you were going with that. Oh, look at that. That is.
Yeah. It's a one of a kind, but keeping on the theme of innovation, I mean, this is it's a fabulous car to look at. But one of the innovative things about it is it's electric and got a very small engine, petrol engine. But one of the things that they did to make it go fast was to make the drag coefficient so low. That's why it's got all these holes in it everywhere, so the air can go through it. And it's made out of carbon fiber, so it's very light. But yeah, apart from that, it looks great. Well, I think it does anyway.
So when you get that like in the kitchen and on a carpet, how does it suck up the dirt then?
It's very clever, Ben. It's got these things in the wheels.
Is it 95 miles an hour?
Yeah, I'd never do that. That's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, we know where you bought that. That's a car that's all on the outside. It's lovely. It's very good. I'm very jealous. I think it's lovely. Yeah. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to have to buy something better than that. I thought the Hoover would win, but you trumped me, basically.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Right. Good fun as always, Ben. Thanks very much. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will be back next week with more of the same. And have a good weekend.
Yeah. Have a good weekend. Stay safe, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.